Today in this session we're going to be looking at one of our Cadimage tools for ArchiCAD. It's Keynotes, and Keynotes allows us to add notes to our documentation within ArchiCAD projects. So I'm Ken from Cadimage UK, and I'm going to be running through the session looking at Keynotes. So a little bit of background on Keynotes. Keynotes for ArchiCAD 18, effectively what this does is provide a database framework for your notes. So rather than just typing things or copy-pasting or storing them in Excel or whatever it happens to be, it's a complete framework that sits within ArchiCAD. It can also be imported and exported in different formats. But Keynotes allows you to annotate your drawings by adding your keynotes, and they take various different fonts, which we're going to come on and look at. And this all helps to reduce the potential errors if you're working from one central database and you're not copy-pasting, etc. And it also gives you better accuracy in terms of the notes and the content of them within the database. The notes can take various forms. You can have a full note, which could be very wordy. You can have just a very simple reference. You can use specification references. They can actually be based on attributes, so link to walls, lines, fills, various different attributes that way. And of course, at the end of it, we can then schedule the notes to put them into some form that gathers them together to show what's been used. So here's just a typical example of exactly the same keynote, and it's just showing different things. So here I've got just purely the reference key, here I've got the title, here I've got the key and the title, the spec ref, and then we can have a detailed one which is bringing in the key, the title, and the description, and of course I could have the spec ref on there as well if I wanted to. So it's just a whole number of different ways we can show these things depending on the type of document you're producing and how you want to actually show them on your piece of paper ultimately. So the model we're going to use is this one here. So I'll just do a quick run through so you can see what we're looking at. So we have a ground floor, a first floor, we have a section through the building which we'll use as well, an elevation, and just so you can see it in its full glory, here is the 3D of that same model. Switching now to look specifically at Keynotes, first thing when we just open ArchiCAD is, well, nothing really, nothing happens, because what we have to do is switch on the Keynotes palette. So all we do is go to Cadimage, down to Keynotes, and then we launch Keynotes palette. So this is the palette. You can, as you can see here, dock it to the top, to the side, to the other side, just wherever you need it to be really on the screen. I'm going to leave mine kind of floating because I've foolishly set the views up for this configuration of palettes without considering the Keynotes palette, which was a bit daft really, but never mind. Out the box, you actually have no database at all, so there'll be no fields in here at all. I've put these three in just to give you a very simple starting point, just to show some of the very, very basic features to begin with. Right now the database is editable, so we can actually come in here and we can actually search. If I do title, then it will go search for all the entries that contain title, which obviously is all of them right now. That might be better later on when we get a bit more detail to work with. Right now the database is editable. If I switch the Keynote editing palette off, what happens is we go into a non-edit mode, so we can place keynotes, but we can't actually edit their content in any way, shape or form. So that's just something to be aware of. What I'm going to do though is just grab these three and I'm going to just delete them. One new thing with Keynotes for 18 is you don't actually delete entries. They actually, you'll see there's a status here. So the current status, there's nothing here, but if we go and look at deleted, then you can see there's some that are missing from what I've imported earlier, but there's also these ones here. So if you decide that actually you want to bring it back, you go grab it, hit restore, and what happens is if we go look at current, then it pops up and you can see it. There's an option to show all, so italic will be the ones that are deleted and can be restored, and plain text are the ones that are active right now. So if I just take that one and delete it again, and we'll switch this just to look at current. So the very first thing that we do to be able to actually use Keynotes, or the simplest thing to do because I've already got a database of information, is just simply import from previous version. So I've already got a database sitting in 17. The default format now is .keynotes, that's the name of the database, but under here you can actually switch to look for CSVs or TXT files. So this is the one that comes straight from ArchiCAD 17 and installs with Keynote 17. So I'm just going to open this up. And what it does is it comes up and it gives me an option of what to do with duplicate keys. Basically gives me an option of how to import this text and how to set the fields up. So I'm quite happy the way it is. All I do is hit OK, and I then get this Keynotes database appear in the palette. You can see I can expand them, the keys are in place, there's various different bits and pieces. So let's just go to the top somewhere, bad example, 2, and if I grab one of these, so any old reference, what we can then do is look at the Keynote editing. So the first thing we see is the Keynote key, so that's the number that's specified here. These items can be dragged around, you can drag and drop on top or below or whatever you need to do with it. So if I just put it here, we can then, I wasn't paying attention, let's grab this one, there we go. So once we've got this, what we can then do is look at the key, the title maybe. If I want to change that, it's literally just add something, and that puts it onto that particular key. So the next time it's placed, and we can also go and audit, we can update so they all have the same title field. So I'll just take that back out so as not to confuse things. There's no spec reference given here, but if we were working with an external database and it did have a spec field that said something, then we could just do XYZ underscore 47 part 1, whatever it is. We just put in some sort of reference, and that can then be used wherever within the project. There's then the full description given, and this is a pretty lengthy text field that you can go and add as much detail as you need, and these can be pulled out in various different formats. Editing's fairly straightforward. The next part really is placing a keynote. So there's various ways to do it, but effectively they all use the label tool. So if I just go to label, I've actually set some favorites up. Let's just go key only initially. And what this does is set the various formatting. So the height of the text, let's make it 2mm text. We can have bold, italic, underline, whatever we need in here. We've got the options for the pointer, so like angular lines. We can choose the placement of the text, how it's anchored. We can set the arrowhead style, again, the size of the arrowhead, the various different colours. Let's just make them all black. So we change that in exactly the normal way. And then if we actually look at the Keynote label settings, this is where we can determine what's going on in here. So the content of this particular Keynote is purely the key. If I switch on title, then it goes and picks up title. If we put on description, if we put on spec reference, then you can see all of this picks up, as well as category, if it was in a subfield like structure or enclosure. So let's turn that back to where it was. We can then choose text format. Now in here, because I switched everything off, there is only general formatting and the key itself. But you'll see later on when we look at some of the other ones, there's more options appear under here if we've chosen to add further levels of detail. And then the final thing is we can put a frame on. So we can choose what type of frame goes around this Keynote. So because this one is just purely the key itself, maybe we'll have rounded corners. And all I do is hit OK. And to place it, I have to choose, first of all, which one I want. So we'll go for that one. And just to be aware, I'm randomly picking keynotes out of here and pointing at things. There's not necessarily any correlation between what I've picked and what I've clicked. It's just for speed, I'm just picking things out. So there we go. So this double bed is now referenced as 2905. We might then want underpinning of the sink, which obviously is a major thing. We might then go and look at enclosure, and we'll have one of those things in the little wardrobe here maybe. And let's have line of glazing below. That sounds good. So we'll put that attached to here, and we'll pull it off and drop it in there. So just very, very simple Keynote. If we go back into the settings, what we can maybe do then is switch to a different type. So this time, rather than display the key, let me see the title. Frame, I'm not really keen on the frame this time, so I'm going to have no frame at all. And this time what happens is if I pick one of these, and again just point and click, this time what I get is the label coming off, and this time the description. I could carry on with this and we could do lots of different things, but because these are labels, it's quite nice also to be able to just pick up Go back into the settings, and this time let's have the key and the title, but let's change the format. So the key itself is bold text, the title maybe we'll put in italic, and the frame, let's just make, I like the vertical edges. So we drop that in, hit OK, and what it does is, even though I've only placed the key, it recognises a link to that particular keynote, so it goes and it picks up the title or the description or whatever field it happens to be and pulls it in. So you can format this in whatever way you need to do it. The next thing that's important though is the ability to add more than one key. So let's just scroll down here a little bit and find something suitable. So we'll have one of them, and all I'm doing is I'm on a PC, so I'm using the Control key to click more than one element. On a Mac, you'd hold down the Alt key, and it just allows you to pick up multiples. Once I've done that, if I double click, what actually happens is, if I then place the middle of this car roughly here and here, what it does is go and pick up the 4 keynotes that I've actually selected there, except I can't count, there's actually only 3 that I must have picked up. But what it does is it shows me what's been selected. This allows me to manage the amount of data within these fields. So if I decide that actually I wanted to include that one as well, I can pick this up and just double click, and you'll see it actually adds into the list. So if I double click on any of these, then it just adds and it keeps populating the list. So maybe at this point it's getting a bit complicated, and what we'll maybe do is just switch back and show only the keys. And again, that drops back, tidies itself up, and that's what we see. So it's nice and simple. Another way to do this is, rather than just click to place a point, I might want to link to an element. So if I just pick the car up, let's go and say we want to have steel doors, windows and roof lights. That sounds like a common thing for a car. And stainless steel doors and windows. I could grab the 2 of these and then literally just double click. And what it does is drop them into that particular element. And it links to, in this case, the centre of that. Now actually I made a bit of a mistake there because I double clicked on one element rather than control double clicking, so it actually only added the element that I clicked on. But if I find the other one that I want, I can grab this and I can actually just press the add button down here, and that drops it in place as well. So there's various different ways that we can do these things. Another thing that we can do is something called attribute keynotes. Now what these do is allow us to associate keynotes to attributes within various attributes within ArchiCAD. To do this, I go into the Cadimage menu, Keynotes, and I'm going to look at attribute keynotes. These are the attributes we can use, so lines, fills, composites, surfaces, profiles, and building materials. There's a whole host that we could actually work with, but I'm just going to go for composites, for example, because I know that the wall on the outside here is this external Block 20 series stone finish. And it works in a similar way. I've got access to exactly the same Keynotes database. If I just try typing in stone, we could have stone retaining wall or retaining wall less than a metre high. Those are the 2 that contain stone, so not actually all that useful, but I'll take the retaining wall, we'll have that in here, we'll add just some other bits and pieces here at random, we'll insert those, and those are now associated with that particular composite. Couldn't remember the name of it there. Now they won't actually display on the screen here, but if I select that composite, then what it actually does is it hides the display of linked attributes, because these are designed to then be picked up in a schedule that's visible on a drawing sheet. But what it does is it allows me to see them, and I can actually say show, and it goes and it picks up and it shows wherever that composite's used, these are the random keynotes that I've picked up and placed. And again, it can be edited in here, so we can grab these things and we can actually say remove. And there might be common ones that I don't want to be visible. What I can do is actually tell it to hide these. They will disappear from the list, but they will be picked up in any Keynote schedule that we produce, so that you can see them on the final piece of paper when it's required. What I can also do is select all the keynotes, go into the settings, and then format them all back to some sort of standard format. So maybe let's just have key and title. So that changes them all back to the same common format. Yes, I've changed the format back to some sort of standard thing, although I have to go and then choose the frame because I've set them in different ways. That can all be tidied up. But if I just quickly go to the section, and I'm just going to add a couple of keynotes. So what I'll do maybe is pick up these lamps. We'll go for something like those two, add those keynotes, and we will have one of these here, one down here, something there on there, and something up here. Similarly in the elevation, I'll just quickly drop in a few bits and pieces. Again, I've selected just one, so we'll add the others. We'll have something coming off there, there. Whoops, not very straight, but never mind, one of those. If these need to be changed, I've set these all the same, we could go and actually just pick rammed earth, drop that in there and remove the other one. We'll take this one, make it prefabricated trusses and take off that other one that I didn't want. So we can play around with them nice and easily using these add and remove buttons on the live edit on the bottom here. You will notice actually if you switch off live edit, there's a get and a set and an add and remove button. These allow us to get to pick up the keynote information. So we can take this one here, get the information from there, take that one out, take that one out, maybe add in this one, add in another, let's go pick up another one from a different place, add in that one, and it's only when I'm happy with it and ready when I press set that it actually goes and updates the keynote for me. So put a whole load of stuff in there. What I really need to do now is take a look at the schedule. So if I go to just my ground floor, the keynotes obviously display on plan, but the whole point of this actually is if I go back to the source view, what I really should have is some sort of consistency here. So let's make the content purely the key. We'll make the format, it's not bold, so that's okay. So just a plain key, and the frame we'll set for, let's just go rounded corners. So each one of the keynotes is just a very, very simple reference. There's obviously a bit of tidying up I have to do in here because of the way I've moved things, but you get the basic idea. So just very, very simple. So the drawing's as uncluttered as possible. When I then go and look at the drawing on a piece of paper, you can see this is now updated. I can see my key, but I've no way of knowing what these actually refer to here. So the next thing that I have to do is again use the Cadimage menu, and all we do is we go to Keynotes, and what I can do is then go in here and say create a schedule. So I want to schedule just the current layout. If there's lots and lots of layouts in here, it will take a bit of time. I could do all the keynotes. I'm going to come to that later on. I can use all the ones in the project, but actually what I want is just very simple, use and show only the keynotes that are used in this layout. So I hit OK. It defaults to the top left-hand corner. You can see it's just obliterated half the drawing, but there are handles on here, so we can go pick this up and we can stretch it around. Still doesn't quite fit. Maybe what we could do instead is shrink it up across the top of the page. Yeah, almost. So we can pull that down like so. Kind of missing a little bit over there, but obviously you guys can spend time to tidy this up and do what you need to do with it. But one way or another, what we can do is we can go look here and see we've got 2505 or 20505 and 70302, whatever it is. If we go up here, 20505 minor demolition, 70302 is going to be over here. There we go, it's whatever that thing happens to be. But what it allows us to do is combine the drawing with as minimal information as possible with the detail available in the notes on the actual piece of paper. Again, this can be formatted in a similar way to the actual keynote references themselves. We can go into the settings and we have all these options. So the content can be chosen. So we have at the top here notes. So let's maybe just call that keynote schedule. So that's just a piece of text that's going to go across the top here. We then have the key. That's probably pretty important because we need to know if this is a 2, a 3, or whatever the number happens to be. We have the title itself, the description, and then if it's used, the spec reference. So maybe you actually want to hide the description and just have the titles. combine that with the spec reference. Hit OK, and off it goes and it tidies up, and we're left with a much tidier overall thing here. What I could then do is, with this basic information just on this drawing sheet, if I go to this final one, this combines all the sections and elevations. There's no reason it could just be one blank drawing sheet, but what I could do here is this time create another schedule, but tell it to pick up the keynotes used in the project. So not all the keynotes, but all the ones that have been used. And then that can be placed. Again, it'll go up the top left here, but we'll just pick that up and we'll move it down a little bit. I won't go into the whole stretching it out just yet, but we can go into this now, and maybe what we have this time is the content would be the key. Maybe I don't need the title, I don't need the spec reference, it's just the key and the description. So we're building up a proper schedule of works of what's actually going on within the project. So that could be exported on just one single page that could go out to a PDF or whatever it happens to be to get it out the door to wherever it happens to be needed. So that's how we can schedule. There's a few other options in the keynotes. We can obviously create the labels. We can audit labels, which will allow us to go and check if we've edited them in any way. It will highlight where they've been edited. You can go and then zoom to them and check that you're ready to do the update because you don't want your revisions to get ahead of you, etc. The schedules can be updated because obviously the drawings continue to develop and change. And we've already looked at attribute keynotes, but we also have the import and the export options as well. For those keynotes. So once I've done a load of work on here, if I want to use it in another project that's ArchiCAD 18, we can export, and this time export it to a keynotes formatted file. That is a bit of a run through keynotes for ArchiCAD 18. Thanks for taking the time to attend.